Why did the Spanish create a system where some people were treated as lesser than others? That's the question to ask when looking at how labor, slavery, and caste worked in their colonies. It wasn't something that happened overnight, it was shaped over time. At first, the Spanish used Native Americans to work on plantations and mine for gold and silver. This was called the Encomienda system. The word Encomienda means in trust, but it was far from fair. The Spanish claimed they would protect the Native Americans, but in reality, they forced them into labor to profit from crops like sugar and tobacco, which were in high demand across the world. Silver, especially from mines like Potosi in Bolivia, was a major source of wealth for Spain. The Spanish crown used this wealth to fund wars in Europe, pay off debts, and maintain global trade routes. These routes, such as the Manila Galleon, connected the Americas, Asia, and Europe. The silver mined in the Americas was critical for trade with China, where it was used as currency. This flow of wealth boosted Spain's global influence and allowed it to dominate European politics. Later, the Spanish brought in enslaved Africans to work alongside the Native Americans. European traders collaborated with West African groups to capture and transport slaves. The Spanish needed more labor to keep producing goods like sugar and silver, which were essential to their global trade networks. The mercantilist system, an economic policy where colonies existed to benefit the mother country, relied heavily on these goods. Spain's economy thrived because these labor systems ensured a steady flow of valuable resources. This wealth allowed Spain to dominate politically and economically in Europe, making it one of the most powerful empires of its time. Without the silver and crops produced by its colonies, Spain could not have maintained its global status. To keep this system going, the Spanish created a strict caste system. At the top were the Peninsulares, people born in Spain who held the most power in government and the church. Below them were the Criollos, Europeans born in the colonies. Though wealthy, they were barred from the highest positions. The next group included Mestizos, mixed European and Native American ancestry, and mulattoes, mixed European and African ancestry, who had limited rights and opportunities. At the bottom were Indigenous, Native Americans, and enslaved Africans, forced to do the hardest labor with the fewest freedoms. Think of it like this. Imagine a school where a few students get all the best privileges, like access to the nicest classrooms and the chance to be on the school board, while everyone else does the toughest jobs, like cleaning, with no say in how things are run. The Spanish used this structure to keep control and make sure the wealth flowed up to them. Why did the Spanish do this? They needed to control labor and resources to maintain their empire's economic power. Without the Encomienda system and slavery, Spain wouldn't have been able to fund its military expansions or maintain its global influence. The mercantilist system ensured that the colonies supplied Spain with wealth, while the Spanish controlled trade to keep other European nations at bay. Now let's fast forward to today. The social divisions the Spanish established didn't vanish when their empire fell. In countries like Mexico and Peru and the southwestern United States, these divisions are still seen in economic inequality and racial disparities. For example, land ownership is still heavily concentrated in the hands of the descendants of Europeans, while indigenous and African-descended populations often face poverty and limited access to education. In Brazil, recent political movements have focused on land reform and the rights of indigenous communities, directly linking back to colonial-era land policies. In Bolivia, Evo Morales, an indigenous leader, became president and pushed for the redistribution of resources, challenging the old colonial system that still favors descendants of Europeans. In Chile, there has been an effort to rewrite the constitution to address economic inequality and indigenous rights. This movement gained momentum after years of unrest, with the political left seeing it as a way to break from the colonial past. On the other hand, conservative groups argue that the changes could harm the economy and create instability. This debate shows how colonial legacies are still deeply embedded in modern political struggles. Outside Latin America, Spain's wealth from the colonies also influenced other European powers. The British and French, seeing Spain's success, adopted different strategies to control their colonies. Instead of formal caste systems, they used indirect control and economic exploitation. In Africa and Asia, the British often worked with local elites to manage resources and maintain order, while the French focused on cultural assimilation alongside economic dominance. These colonial strategies fueled the rise of global capitalism, with European powers extracting resources from their colonies to fund their own industrial revolutions. This led to a lasting divide between colonizing nations and their colonies, a divide that still affects global economics today. These systems of control are still affecting societies around the world. Recognizing how they were set up helps us see patterns of inequality, not just in Latin America, but across the globe. Colonialism's legacy is something we all live with, and it continues to shape economic and social structures in ways that can't be ignored. How do the inequalities from the past still shape the present? What connections can you draw between colonial systems and today's economic and social divides? How can understanding history help us build a fairer future?